This is We the Sales Engineers Podcast, show 60.
Welcome to We the SEs podcast, the show for sales engineers by sales engineers with your host, Ramzi Majaba. Ramzi claims he used to play semi-pro basketball in Lebanon, but he never got paid. I'm not quite sure how to break it to him that it just means that it was a hobby. Oh well, I think I may have gotten the point across now.
Hello, SE Nation. I just had the greatest conversation in a long time. You will soon listen to Don Carmichael. Don is based out of the UK and he works with SE leaders as a consultant. He does to-win demo training, among other things. It was such a good conversation that I do not want to keep you from it, only to say that show notes are at wethesalesengineers.com/show 60. Now let's get to the show. Hey, Don, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I think we talked about it before. They're a long-time listener, first-time caller.
Yes.
Let's use that.
Yes.
Swear out the movies, talk show host.
And you're probably my first guest with the best audio. Like, you rank number one in terms of audio.
Thank you so much.
The way I can hear you. So thank you for having a microphone in front of you. That makes it easier for my listeners. And besides having a microphone, what can you tell us about yourself so that my listeners can know a little bit more about you?
Oh, okay. So let's use the word pre-sales. And I know you've had whole episodes about the various job titles that we've all got in the kind of sales support role. So if I use pre-sales, and please excuse me, I also mean sales engineers, sales consultants, architects, but everyone who's in a kind of sales support role, customer client-facing sales support role. So I'll use the word pre-sales just generically for that, if that's okay. So I've been doing pre-sales more than half my life, which is quite a scary thing. And you're looking at me and kind of going, he's not that old.
I'm trying to do the math.
Yeah, if you're listening to this, imagine someone with grey hair. There you go. That's instead of watching. Okay, so and I started off getting in pre-sales completely by accident, which I think happens probably in a lot of kind of small technology companies. Is that I was doing kind of implementation stuff. So I was in the ERP world, so kind of big enterprise stuff. And it just so happened out of all the people who were doing implementation consulting, there was 4 of us who kept getting asked by the salespeople to pulling us off deals and kind of going, can you come and present the technology? And salespeople are quite clever about this, because they're going to try and focus on the people that they think are going to be credible, can communicate and, build rapport and build some trust and hopefully present in a way that's going to get people that, convinced that the technology is going to meet the outcomes that they're after. So by default, these 4 people, I was one, and we got to a point that we weren't really doing enough implementations. And I think the company turned around and go, do you know what? This has really turned into like a mini pre-sales department. Let's have you just focused on helping sales. So I didn't know what pre-sales were. I didn't even know we had a term for it. It was just I find this is the most enjoyable bit, is that I love this connecting with the client. I also discovered that over the years as well, is that this is really, if you're a musician and you've ever played live, that scary bit with the audience interaction, there's a buzz you get. There's a passion, there's like an energy transfer thing, and I get the same thing there. And I also do things like, one of my recent passions I've finally been able to find a way of kind of playing out, is that I've now become a Stonehenge landscape tour guide. And again, I spend about 3 hours taking people around Stonehenge, and people are really passionate about that place and are really interested to hear. And again, this audience thing, the fact that you can provide some information they don't know, and they're kind of buying into, the story arcs about how you explain, what happened there, why it's there, what we don't know, which is most of the story. Again, it's very similar to the buzz I get out of pre-sales. So I think, and also if you're into amateur dramatics, that kind of thing, I think a lot of people know what I mean, but can't put a name to it. That bit where the audience, the client, is bought into you, and you've kind of earned the trust and respect and rapport. And you don't have to move your mouse around anymore. You don't have to kind of demonstrate. People trust you. They want to know your opinion and value the opinion that you've got about how, how you can solve their business problems. It's pains, whatever it is, meet the outcomes that they want. So going back to career anyway, so I basically carried on with lots of partner ERP companies until I became an SAP partner. And that was round about, when was that? That was a huge recession thing. And I was at the time working for a JD Edwards partner. And if anybody knows about that, that JD Edwards got bought by PeopleSoft, and then PeopleSoft got bought by Oracle. Oracle turned around and said, we don't need JD Edwards anymore. We've got a thing called e-business, and you couldn't give it away. So I was out of a job, something I really enjoyed. I was fed up with the industry. So I went backpacking around the world for a year. And I was unbelievably lucky because I had a phone call from some friends who'd been at the SAP partner. And at the time, SAP had this habit of recruiting from partners, which I have to say is very naughty after a while, because eventually partners go, hold on a minute, we're not some kind of, learning academy, to train people up so you can steal them. So you should stop doing that. So very naughty. But that's what they were doing at the time. So I had lots of colleagues I'd worked with who were there, and they needed somebody who knew about the kind of mid-market. And by then I'd clocked up quite a lot of different ERP products, things I'd done, some Microsoft Exapta, JD Edwards, SAP, and lots of other products. So it was kind of, do you want to come on board and work in, do some mid-market stuff, which I did. And I was over the moon, because if you've worked for a partner, I think most pre-sales people would say you've got an aspiration that you want to work for the author. Yeah, because I think you just do in the end. You'd like to work for the author. So I was over the moon to do that. I was there 11 years. The first thing I did really very quickly, I had the job of moved into global channel enablement, and I was given this really scary job. Here's a load of money. It was a small team. There was 3 of us, and we had to write all of the pre-sales enablement content and all of the sales content to train all of the partners globally. And it was like, well, how are you going to do about that? How are you going to do that? So we had to take, work with other people, buy in intellectual property, convert it into kind of e-learning. I didn't even know it was called e-learning at the time. It was just that is the only way you're going to scale things up to for thousands of people to consume it. So I did that. That was one of the best times I ever had, was to have that level of trust that people said, look, you do know what you're doing. Just find a way of getting those things that are in your head, your thoughts, and how you think people, should progress and train, and try and, find a way of getting that out, work with some other people to win, or come back on to demo to win. And, how can you get that to instill that knowledge and that passion into other people? So that was a wonderful time. And then the last 7 years, I was head of pre-sales development for EMEA at SAP. And that was all the way from not having a regional team at all to, because then it was different kind of market units, so countries or collections of countries that had autonomous pre-sales teams. And it was like, how can we pull that together and have something, where we can have a regional core, where we can kind of pass around best practice, and then moving on to rolling out the tools that sit behind a professional pre-sales team, the enablement that goes with it, dashboards. How do you measure it? What best practices? What's best practice with head counts, that kind of thing. So again, wonderful time there. But I wanted to, it was getting further and further away from, I've already said this, the passionate bit about working with, working in front of people. And, if you've got a real passion for what best practice is and finding a way of communicating, I wanted to go back to doing that. So I left in, was it 2015? And started my company Winning Skills with the direct intention that was what I was going to do. It was about coaching and teaching best practice pre-sales skills. Since then, I had a little kind of I think it was 8 months a year at Oracle, where I was doing exactly the same thing for their EMEA field pre-sales people. Again, wonderful time there, learned a huge amount. So, and then back to kind of Winning Skills. So, and then what I do now is it's partly content and consulting activities with pre-sales leaders, but it's also partly I partner with 2Win, who are famous for Demo to Win. So I facilitate some of their courses, but I also consult for them as well, because they've got a new practice called Rule of 24. So, wow, that took a long time, didn't it? Just talk about all that. But it's all interesting stuff, hopefully.
It is to me, and I have a bunch of clarifying questions if you don't mind.
Ooh, of course.
So when you were doing the integration job / accidental SE, you weren't getting paid commission.
No.
So they were just abusing you.
Actually, I'll tell you a really not embarrassing, really telling story. We didn't get paid any commission, but I remember one salesperson buying me a chocolate bar.
Oh, that's nice. That's
he won a deal. He presumably made thousands out of it, and he was so grateful for the help that he bought me a chocolate bar. I didn't misread the situation. I was as horrified as whoever's listening and hearing that.
Wow.
You're joking, aren't you?
Yeah.
But that's what happened.
That's like me offering someone from support free beer whenever we meet, like at a sales meeting or something. It's like, yeah, I'll buy you a beer. Like, dude, it's free.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh no, I would have preferred a beer. A chocolate bar didn't work. Didn't do it at all.
Okay. All right. Next time. So when you mean author, that means like the company that's creating the tools and then selling it versus partners. Is that?
That's it. That's exactly it. Yeah. Sorry, the author. So that so SAP's got lots and lots of big massive partner ecosystem, and if you're working out, I think probably like myself, a lot of people, you'd like at some point in your career to work for SAP themselves. That might be a career aspiration to do that. Same thing. I think in any other, if you're a Salesforce partner, at some point in your career, you might, think, I'd like to be seen as good enough to work for the actual author for Salesforce themselves.
Okay, that's interesting. Why do you think that is? Like, our partner, like, that makes me think that partner SEs think that they're not equal to vendor SEs, or like, what's happening there?
Well, I think that's an interesting point, by the way. But I think it's the influence you get. There's being able to put the badge on that says SAP is quite something, and also you're working with the people who are designing, creating, marketing, selling to the really, really big companies, because in something like the SAP world, the really big sales, these multi millions, SAP themselves are involved in that, quite rightly. Somebody like BP might have some partners, but they'll want to deal with the author directly. Okay. So the great massive opportunity if you work for the author, and also you've got that direct chance to have that influence on where the product's going, and there is some kudos in having that badge. Let's be honest about it. We're all kind of humble beings, and with our kind of poor traits and things like that. It's nice to have the badge.
Okay, that's a very good point. I know it wasn't planned as part of our discussion, but if we have time, I would like to chat with you about the different set of skills needed between working for a partner and working for an author. But we'll get that, or we can schedule another session if you have time to talk about that.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, the short answer to that, by the way, is it's not really that different at all.
Okay, then we don't need a session.
No, it is worth exploring, but it isn't that different.
Okay. All right. Yep. So, and pre-sales enablement. What are you enabling? What are you teaching the pre-sales team?
Ooh, that now you've actually hit on a really, really good point, because there is a difference between teaching and learning and enablement. So enablement, my view would be, is it's a lot more than just teaching. So, and a lot more than just coaching. So enablement really includes all of the content that you're going to use. So it's gaining the skills. So how are you going to gain the skills? And, how do you make sure that, use this horrible word, behavior, you change your behavior to use so that you actually practice using those skills and, to the best practice. And that's actually having the impact that people intended. So enablement is the whole thing. It's kind of the change, and also the tools that you need, because it might not be just training. You might need some content. Where's that going to? You might need some tools. You might need some coaching. It's all of that together.
Okay. So my view of enablement might be different from what you've seen. The companies that I've worked for that had enablement focus only on the technical aspect of how to use the tool, and all that, which for most engineers, it is easy to figure out because we get to play with stuff all the time and we figure it out. The hard part for engineers is the soft skills.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Is that something that enablement in different companies teach, or is it like something that is expected for us to learn on our own?
No, other companies will grasp that. I have this model. It's in some of the stuff I publish, where I try to really hard to simplify all this down. And so basically, it's a pie chart. And what my personal belief of what a best practice pre-sales person looks like is 1/3 technology, the technical skills, and what's the American expression? You've got to know that cold, stone cold. You have got to, there is absolutely no excuse to be on top of the latest version and know it inside out, because otherwise you are completely dangerous. Okay, so you've got to do that. And you're right, most companies have got that sorted. You know, they're all the way from, you know, product development through to product marketing, you know, how we're going to enable people. And that's how they view the world, which is, it's from a technology bias. And to get that, and you've got to get that, that's the first thing you've got to get right. Another 1/3 is, let's call it domain, industry, and value, which is you've got to, maybe you don't work in an industry like oil and gas or something, but if you did, you need to know that inside out. You need to know who all the other competitors are. You need to know the terminology. You need to know what's happening, what's driving the insights, and that you need to understand how do people perceive value in that industry. And again, you've got to have all the language right, and how does your product fit into that? If it's not an industry, if it's a technology domain, you need to know the domain inside out as well. So that's not just the technology, you need to know how is it actually used. So that's another 1/3. And then the final 1/3 is people, communication, and presentation skills. Okay, so I think those things are just as important as knowing the technology, because, you know, how do you communicate? How do you build rapport? There's a big thing these days, pre-suade, which is actually all the way down to even things like your LinkedIn profile, which is, you know, we live in a social world. You know, if people are going to, if, you know, friends check each other out on Facebook, why do you not think clients are not checking you out on LinkedIn? And never mind, you know, you've got 12 seconds to make an impression with someone. That's gone. That's gone. People are making their mind up about whether to believe you, whether you're credible, by your LinkedIn profile before they even meet you. Yeah, so this is all about, can you persuade them that you are a credible person to talk to? So, you know, all these things all mix in together. I mean, I've massively oversimplified it by saying it's, you know, technology, the value in the industry and the domain, and the people and the communication and the presentation skills. And I mean, I would wrap around the outside about things like passion, the fact you've got to be a learning machine the rest of your life, and commercial acumen. One of the things and this goes on to the role of, you know, SEs and account managers, so pre-sales and salespeople kind of working together. As pre-sales, you can't just be the technical font of knowledge. You need to understand what's happened, that you're in a commercial process. And I would argue and understand just as much as a salesperson does about the sales methodology that you're using and understanding the buying signals. Because you know, we're living in a world where you can't just rock up, do a demo and go, there you go, I've done it, tick, buy. There's a commercial reason you did that, and it's to move the commercial process along. And you have to understand that is what your purpose is there for. It's either for the initial sale, or if you're doing it as part of a customer success, you know, subscription revenue kind of model, it's about retention and expansion. You need to understand that you're not there to move the mouse around and go, isn't it fantastic? Have you seen anything you like yet? You're there to move it on as a commercial process.
And that's where demo to win comes in. I've read the book, and the best part of the book for me was the discovery chapter.
Brilliant.
Yeah. So, but that's all part of what you were saying. Like, you have to understand what they want in order to show them. It's not just clicking buttons.
Yeah, you need to, absolutely right. And I know I think a previous episode, you kind of talked discovery, with Peter Cohen, who's, you know, big shout out to Peter, and great demo. That's another brilliant book. And John Kerr, you know, the kind of real big thought leaders there. And I think he talked about discovery versus qualification. Actually, that was one of the reasons, you know, we were going to move on to this topic about people mistaking the two things. So salespeople think they've done discovery. This Peter said that he's absolutely right. And what they've actually done is kind of BANT, which is establishing, is there a budget? Is there authority? Someone who can make a decision. Is there a need for it? And is the timing right? And of course, timing is the most important thing, which is if they're not going to do anything now, why should we spend any cost of sale and kind of nurturing them? Let's kind of leave it till later. Let's go to someone who can actually has got a need and a budget and timing. Let's work on that. So discovery versus qualification. Discovery itself, if you're allowed to do it, and we should come back to that because we're moving into a world where you're going to get less and less chance to do any discovery because the expectations are so much higher that as soon as a client engages with you, and we learn from Challenger CEB that can be 3/4 of the way through the sales cycle before they reveal themselves almost and want to engage with you. And the only reason they'll do that is because you hold some kind of information that they can't access and they can't absorb from looking on a web or talking or networking with other people or looking at case studies, looking at any content that your company, publishes outside the firewall or is not gated, So their expectation level when they get to meet you is absolutely enormous. And that causes huge problems on what might be the very first demo, because they might say, well, you don't need to do any discovery. You should know our business. We've read your case studies. You should know all the insights. You should know what should be important to us. You don't have to ask us that. And you roll into these really difficult kind of first demo things where it's like super challenging right at the beginning. And by the way, as well, for people who are not in pre-sales, that can be one of the things that puts you right off doing the role. Is if you've come from a consulting background where you've had the time, you've been working on a site, working with a client, had time to build rapport. If you come into pre-sales and that's your first experience of it, you'll absolutely hate it because it's challenging. You've got to, if you're doing it right, you've got to understand objection handling skills. So Ramsey, I know you've done a session on negotiation skills. That isn't just for salespeople. You need to know as a pre-sales person as well. You need to have some of those skills there as well about, how to negotiate things in and out of the discussion that you're having, and trade things backwards and forwards. Discovery is even getting access for discovery is a negotiation skill.
So
we were talking about discovery, weren't we?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Well, no, that's it's an interesting conversation. So if you come and meet me, I'm the customer, and I tell you, I just want to see the product. Yeah. What do you do then?
Well, okay. So now moving into, you'd still want to try and do some discovery, but you now need to move into this kind of like agile discovery mode, and this has now got a lot to do with how well prepared you are up front. So the first thing to recognize is there's huge inertia. If you just sit there and do some slides, you're in trouble because they've got this huge expectation right up front. And I think Peter Cohen and he says, do the last thing first is absolutely right in this case, which is you need to show them some product. You need to show the wow part.
Yes.
You need to go right in. Okay, for your industry, this is a bit that this is the wow thing. Here's some insights and here's some product. And that will kind of satisfy them enough to kind of move on. Can I just mention a book here? Because the guy who wrote the original Demonstrating to Win book, which is Bob Restall at To Win. So together with Dan Conway, last year, they wrote a book called Rule of 24. And Rule of 24 is how the world of pre-sales, how demos, how everything has changed in the last 4 years and where it's all going. And so to cut it short, there's a huge long discussion about agile discovery and how to prepare for it and what best practices. And also, again, giving the game away, it talks about how much of pre-sales is going to have to turn into video. So, okay. But we'll come back to that. So this agile discovery, if you don't show them some product, you're dead in the water straight away. So you've got to show them the wow part. And you use that, and again, this is in Rule of 24, you use that as permission to do some kind of light kind of discovery. And at this point, you need to be really, really well prepared because you need to have a demo that's in front of you. So if you think of it as it's already pre-chunked up, your demo, forget about having a linear demo thing anymore. That's gone. Forget it.
Yep.
Now you've got these things that are chunked up. So imagine in front of you, you've got 10 cards. And on each card, there's, let's call it tell, show, tell. There's a tell, show, tell loop that addresses something that fits an insight, a case study, a story arc, something that's hugely going to be or is hugely important for that customer in that industry. What you can do once you've earned the right, and remember, you've got to show some product at the beginning. So let's get that over and done with. We've done the wow. That earns the right for me to spend maybe 2 minutes doing a bit of light discovery. And what I'm going to do is I'm just thinking these 10 cards in front of me that have got these little segments. So remember, they're only probably about 3 or 4 minutes each, these demo segments. And what I can do is I'm very quickly, by the questions I'm asking them, or, what I've done now, if I've had a chance to have a coffee with them beforehand, is I'm triaging. That's a good word, triaging. So I'm basically saying, right, they're not interested in what card number 1 or 2. 3 is super important. 4 and 5, no. 6, that looks like it could be important. We'll use that as a bit of discovery as well. 7 and 8, no. 9, and then don't need 10. So I've just got 3 things. And I know, and so what I can roll straight into that, because I know in 3 or 4 minutes, that's got something that is going to really resonate with them, and it's going to hit some insight, some outcome. It allows me to talk about a case study, a story arc, an analogy, something like that. And I've built these in these 3 cards. And if you do that, that's feeding straight into what they want, which is, things like overview demos and that kind of stuff. We're moving into a world that, forget it, don't do overview demos, video it and give it to them before they arrive. Don't bother with that. Get straight to, what is it that really hurts in their business? Back to pains. What is it? Where is things going? What's going to go wrong if they don't fix this problem? What can you draw from, your case studies that say, almost challenger-like, which is, and I'm not claiming any kind of knowledge of challenger, I'm just using the word in its generic sense, is that, if you don't do something about this, your business is going to go, and pick some example of some business that used to be in the, 100 footsie and kind of no longer is, that kind of thing.
All right. There's a lot to unpack.
Yeah.
Hopefully I remember everything. So if you're in the world of networking and you're trying to sell a network to Verizon Wireless, I don't know if you've worked with that kind of organization, but how would someone come in prepared with a demo of a network? Is that? Well, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah. So, okay, right. You're absolutely. I think if you're going towards, that's not really a kind of. There's demo scenarios and the things that are going to turn into proof of concepts.
Right.
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah. I understand that. Actually, I know also that's a story that draws all the way back to RFPs, because I wrote a really quite controversial piece about RFPs and RFQs, saying what a waste of time they are, except in certain industries, and how everybody should just cut to the chase. The client should realize that RFPs, there's no way they can use an RFP to extrapolate out what it is they actually need, because they don't understand what they need. Yes. And the whole point with us is technology and how fast it's moving is that they actually need our advice. So RFPs, RFQs is a complete waste of time. What everybody should be actually doing is getting your hands on your wallet and paying for 2 proof of concepts. From 2, do your research up front, pick 2 people you think you can do it. It should be quite easy these days. All of the information you need is out there in the public domain. Pay for 2 of them and make a choice based on the end of the proof of concept. Sorry.
No, that's good. But
that was my speech on why you shouldn't bother with RFPs, and proof of concepts are the way to go.
So lucky for me, I haven't had to do RFPs because I end up doing like a proof of concept. But many proof of concepts are free. Like customers don't even have to pay for anything. They just.
I think that's wrong. I
think so too.
Live in a world where you kind of do that, and for some people, the way they think you can do a proof of concept is just spin up an instance of stuff, which is easy in the SaaS world. Just spin up an instance of something and let the client have free reign, and work it out themselves, which is terrible. I mean, it's very, very low conversion rates on allowing people to do that. But you're right. I think you're adding intellectual property. So, Ramsey, if you turn up, I mean, that's not valuing your time and the skills that you've earned and the knowledge that you've got and the credibility and trust that you can earn, clients should pay for proof of concept, because they're getting a huge amount of value from it if you're going to help, you're going to work with them work through the proof of concept. So I think a lot of people are probably in a similar position, is that the only reason we're doing free ones is because the competition offered to do that.
Yes.
If we were all sensible, we would all say, this is actually, people don't, what is it? I don't know if you know, there's a county in England called Yorkshire, and they have this expression, you get out for out. Let me explain what that
Please
is. Please do. But basically it means you get nothing
for nothing.
But if you don't pay anything in, you don't get anything out.
Right. Garbage in, garbage out.
Which is basically saying people don't value stuff if you don't pay for it.
Yeah. So I've had some free POCs which went horrible, mainly because the customer has no skin in the game, and they just like, you do that, I'm going to walk away and do my other thing. But no, I need you to tell me what you want exactly, or how it integrates with your product. Like, I need your help. But because they have no skin in the game, they just walk away. That's
in SaaS world, I spoke to was it an AWC event, AWC, whatever, and Amazon Web Service, AWS event, and I was speaking to a partner, and we were talking about how they drive business, and they were saying, well, we just allow people to have like a free instance, and I said, well, what's your conversion rate on that? And they said 10%, and my understanding across the industry is it's less than 4%.
Okay. Yep.
And it is because, for exactly the reason you've just given, which is if you don't put any effort in, and you're asking the client really to put all the effort in to try and understand, work out for themselves how they're going to get the benefit from it, how they're going to drive the outcomes, then you haven't put any effort in, and they're not going to put the effort in either, and that's why it gets such a low conversion rate.
Yeah. Another benefit to having a paid proof of concept is that account managers will not be offering it left and right, and sales engineers will not be overworked.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, there you go. I turned it into a selfish thing.
Yeah. We have to be very careful with this, because the drawback, and I'll use customer success terminology, because there's, remember, we're in a world where there's like tech touch, kind of low touch and high touch. We're still talking about something that's kind of high touch, so like bigger, perhaps enterprise deals. If you're in a world where it's kind of like, so tech touch is there's not enough money in it for anyone there's no personal contact. It's a kind of product where you just sign up yourself and you work out if there's kind of value. And then low touch is probably a lot more kind of like inside sales, kind of virtual sales thing, where there may be a pre-sales person involved, but there might be, maybe like 10 to 1 or even much higher than that kind of salespeople. And, and I hear people I'm doing, somebody saying I'm doing 9 demos a day. And it's like, well, really, that should really be a video, shouldn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, because they're probably all canned demos. Like,
yeah, they're doing it. It's that's tough for a pre-sales person. There might be some interest in it, based on the questions, if the client's willing to kind of, ask some pointed questions and kind of go, well, that's great, but we have this business problem which is different, so that can make it interest. But it must be terrible if it's 9 times, exactly the same thing, because you'll just get into this kind of routine, saying the same things at the same time, and that's tough. That's hard.
Right. Yeah. So we've been talking about like doing stuff for customers for a while, and a topic of conversation that we agreed upon was like the different types of conversations, and you've been doing this for a while. So what have you seen? How many different types of customers have you seen in your career?
Well, finally we draw into what we were supposed to be talking about.
Everything's been fun though.
Which is absolutely. So this is really interesting, because this is how you segregate out kind of. So if I let's start by borrowing from 2Win. So 2Win would kind of look at the fact that there are operational people, and they have a perception of value in things that they want. And it might be that they're driven to approve something or want something just because it makes their life easier. So there's operational things. Then it's kind of like a managerial level, and they're going to be driven by, or want to have conversations around things like, key performance indicators, total cost of ownership, maybe. Definitely in some industries, things like compliance, risk. A big driver these days for some technology, interestingly, is, normally you would say people only buy things for two reasons, kind of an increase in revenue, reducing cost. But you're increasingly seeing a lot of people buying things because it introduces some agility that they don't have. And, and if it improves their speed to market, they can try things out they haven't tried before or found it difficult to do. But going back to the three levels: operational people, managerial level, and then at the top level, somebody CXO kind of level or a director level who's probably looking at kind of strategic things. So that's three levels of people. That's kind of for sales methodologies. Most salespeople are probably trained in a methodology that's got at least 7 different roles of what they'll call it an evaluation role, but it's basically 7 different roles that people have that they're going to meet, and it's how they influence or not the decision making. So they're kind of looking at things probably in a much more complicated fashion. And again, please make sure that we're not talking about tech touch, we're not talking about low touch. We're now talking about the bigger deals where it's worth investing in building these kind of things. Some people call them influence maps. So that's very much more complicated than that, just having 3 levels of operational, managerial, and CXO level. So, and I'll give you an example. I've just randomly picked a sales methodology, because when you've been through quite a few, you realize they all kind of overlap with each other, and there are massive commonalities. And sometimes people just change some terminology. So here's one here. So influence mapping. So a salesperson's view of the world is they're very quickly working out people. Is this a technical buyer? So a classic technical buyer is someone who's probably lower down the organization, and they understand the technology. And the way you categorize them is normally they can say no, but they can't say yes.
Right. Yes.
Because they're not actual buyer. They just got a level of influence. Somebody might ask them, will that interface into that? Will that API work with that? Yes or no. So it's that. So you've got technical users, people who will use it, or operational level. People who've got a financial kind of back, who are looking at kind of budgets, part of the CFO organization. I might actually put into that as well. If we come back to procurement, sometimes they've got this professional aspect or professional view that they want to be included as well. You might have someone who's like an approver. So we've got a decision maker, which is an actual buyer. You have to be very careful these days. Again, CB research kind of says, what was it, 6.8? It's now way over 7. Actual buyers are part of a modern decision-making process, which basically speaks to the fact that buying is now a consensus-driven thing. Yes. So, there is no one buyer who's going to take on the risk, especially for some of the decisions and coming from a technology world. We're asking people to take a lot of things on faith because, there may not be an existing case study. We may be asking them to take on something that we've never done before either.
Right. Yes.
So decision maker, a sponsor who you may or may never actually meet. I mean, there's a cultural thing you should put over the top of this as well. So I've done quite a bit of work, kind of Dubai, United Arab Emirates, but also talking to people from Saudi KSA, and the sponsor. You get a lot more kind of family-owned or run companies there, and you may get to meet some family members, but you never actually get to meet the actual owner. The person, right. Grandfather, the father, or the mother who actually is driving things. That could be the sponsor. So you may not get to meet those because that could just be someone at a very high executive position. It's just having some oversight, but they're not actually going to put a decision in it. They're just ensuring that rigor has been made in the decision-making process. And then there's coach, or other people might call the coach something like your champion, which someone who's positive for you, hopefully. Sometimes you find out that they're also positive for the competition, which can be really tough if you find that out. And they're helping you navigate, hopefully helping you navigate the way around the company, and helping you kind of introduce you to who are the buyers and who is part of this consensus decision.
All right. Can I add one more?
Of course.
Gatekeeper. I want to add the gatekeeper.
Yeah, a gatekeeper. You've got to get past this person. Yeah.
I've dealt with gatekeepers who know nothing about what the end user needs or they need, but they're still the gatekeepers. And I've met very good gatekeepers who actually know exactly what is needed, and they become your sponsors and champions.
Yeah. But you have to go past them. Yeah, that used to be classic in some companies. About you'd had to start selling kind of at the bottom and work your way up. And every time you worked up a level, they would ask for a discount.
Yes,
That used to happen as well. Yeah, but a gatekeeper could just be as simply as an executive assistant who you've got to convince to get access through to someone who's got a really impressive job title. There is a point here as well where I've got to stop and kind of go, hold on a minute. Because there's this term called the hippo. I don't know if you've heard of this. Have you heard of the hippo before?
Sounds familiar. I'm not sure what it is. I can't remember.
The highest paid person's opinion.
Okay.
Because the hippo. So, because what happens when you actually get a meeting or a demo is sometimes there's a hippo in the room or someone who might kind of just pop in at some point and go, hey, sit at the back and go, hey, don't mind me. And then you subsequently find out that was the CEO. So you need to be super aware of that. But the reason that I'm kind of creating or talking about this hippo thing is that that's super important to know. So salespeople have got this idea. So we talked about technical, different evaluation roles. We've got this view in the pre-sales world where we're trying to segregate things down to perception of value and being able to navigate up and down that value in the demo, because our our chunks of demo should be wrapped around with this value. So remember, we've got operational, managerial, and CXO level. But when you're actually doing a demo, you need to be super hyper aware of who is the hippo.
Right.
A lot of people laugh at this because they're the person you can tell straight away, because as soon as there's an objection or something like that, just watch who's everybody looking at. And it might be, there's a lady to the left-hand side, Linda, who you thought was a little bit more junior. There was someone more senior over on the other side. And it turns out everybody looks towards her and you go, we found this person is super influential. So it might, when it says highest paid person's opinion, it might not be the highest paid person, but it's the person everyone's looking to, because this person is the hyper influencer in the room, and everyone's looking to see what they think of something. And you can use them in a demo, because if you're aware of this role going on, you can say, let's say there's an objection and you've gone through, you've got some kind of standard objection handling technique where, let's say you play back the question to them, make sure you're answering the right question. You ask, you do the empathy thing. Can you tell me a little bit more about that? But you're basically buying time and exploring the question because you think it's actually an objection. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to triage in your brain, work out, do I need to park this? Can I answer it now? How does it impact the agenda or the roadmap that I'm on? Will it take us, is it going to go super technical? And am I going to turn off all these other people who are users? So you need to be, you need to work all this out in your head. But you could just turn to the hippo and say, we can go into this now if you think this is important.
Yes.
It's slightly insulting to the person who's asked the question, but you've already worked out that they're deferring to this other person because you keep looking at them. There's influential person. You can use them and say, hey, if we go into this now, it will mean these other topics that we agreed up front that we were going to talk. We will have to park that and have a second meeting. What would you rather do? Would you like me to kind of take this technical thing, which is an objection, is going to take you quite a long while to work your way through? Shall I kind of set that up as a separate thing with the person who asked it, or should we carry on with the agenda?
Right.
And you can very quickly, they will help you normally work out what's important, and it can be very, very revealing, but you've got to be hyper aware who that person is. And again, jokingly, it's we call it the highest paid person's opinion, but it may not be. It's the most influential person in the room.
Well, yeah. So HIPAA would still stand if you change from HPPO to HIPO, highest influential person in the room.
Yeah, there you go. Brilliant. Thank you, sir.
I'm going to take credit for that one.
He's just fixed it. He's just fixed the implementation.
Now I can write a book. So can I ask you, why turn to the hippo and risk insulting the person who asked the question? Can't you just ask it to? Is there a downside to just asking it to the room in general and make it look like a consensus thing?
You could. Yeah, well, you'd kind of do that, but you would face
Okay, you kind of turn slightly to that.
Because if you get into it, because there are going to be people, you do find this perhaps in larger companies, and if everybody in a client knows who this is, and hopefully you've worked it out before they turn up on a demo, whether it's virtual or live, they're going to be the one that they don't want this, they fear change. They're the one who kind of designed and rolled out whatever the existing system is, or they're more positive for your competitor. They don't want this to happen, or they've got some kind of chip on their shoulder and they want to embarrass you. There'll be some reason. You get some people will ask really difficult questions that they know are going to stop you in your tracks.
Right.
And you get people who do that. Got their own reasons sometimes. So you need to work that out. Well, first of all, work out who's in the room, because if you're doing things properly, best practice is you always know everybody who's going to be in the room or virtual. Yeah, I mean, that's not always possible, but that's the whole point of discovery, is because you know everyone in the room and you understand what their personal value proposition is before they come in, and what it is, what the outcomes that they want to see, and what their fears are, and what are they invested in the current solution, that kind of thing. You should know all that. But we've already talked about the fact that we're moving into a world where you may not get to know that at all. You may, the very first time you meet them, they may be playing all these games with you. May challenge you, see how you handle it. Like, hey, well, that's great, but that's not going to work here because of this. So how do you handle that? And they're working out how what is it like to work with you? So that person who's done that, if you think that's going to go off on this great big rabbit hole of technical stuff, you need to find a way of kind of parking it somehow or other. And this is that you're into negotiation skills, because what you'd probably ideally like to do is something like say, that's a great question. Would it be okay if let's say I did like a little 90-second video afterwards and I send that to you to just show you how that's actually done? Yeah, I mean, if you do, what a brilliant way of parking it and taking all the heat out of the room, and saying, it takes 90 seconds, but I won't do it now. The issue with that, though, is if you say it only takes 90 seconds, they can say, no, just show us it now.
What I like to usually say is, how about we park this right now and I can work with you one-on-one later and show you how it's done. That will give me more room to actually talk with them and see exactly what they're thinking, why they're asking that question. So. But
you also could, if you were thinking about it, kind of go, well, actually, I could do that on a video and that reduces the cost of sale. This is all actually to do with what influence level you think the person is who's just asked that question. Right. So remember I said one of the roles is a technical role.
Yep.
And what I said about that role is that they can say no, but they can't say yes.
Right.
So all you need to, do you know what I mean, is that you need to answer their question somehow or other, but try and, hold their hand over this, try and get them comfortable with it, but actually not spend as little time as you can on it.
Right. Well, for me, because I should have prefaced this, my customers are in one geographical location, and the cost of sale is very low for me to go visit a customer. And I consider it like relationship building, so I can go do that. But if you're traveling the world to go see a customer, maybe that's not the best idea to actually just to show them that little piece. So yeah,
exactly. But you need to ask permission to do that, because if you kind of, if you just sprung that on, surprise them by that later on, you could really turn someone into quite an enemy. Whereas, the whole point is to hold everyone's hand, understand their perception of the risks and the fear that they've got, and, hold their hand to this new world, where everything's improved and they just so happen to have spent some money with us.
Yes.
But it created all this success and good feeling and, new business models, whatever the actual business outcomes they want, rather than the technology, the ones and the zeros that we've sold them.
Right. Okay. So we've covered a lot of information right now in like a short period of time. It's time to move on to the not so fire round, if you're up for it.
Oh yeah, please. Yeah.
All right. Let me bring those questions up. It's the same questions I ask almost everybody. They change from time to time.
I hope I remember what you... okay. I should rehearse this.
Well, that's the point. I like it when
people rehearse. Pre-sales skills. He talks about best practice and he's blown it already.
Yeah, no, nothing that complicated. So the first question is, what do you love about doing what you do today?
what we're doing right now, whether it's live, in person, somebody who's also passionate about what we do, because this is what we do is super important. Can I go off on one that you may have heard this? So there's a brilliant book by a guy called Graham Hawkins, which is about the future of the technology sales industry. And he, amongst lots of other people, are saying the same thing. There's going to be 1 million less salespeople in the tech world very soon. Because in one direction, stuff is going down to this, the tech touch.
Yep.
What do you need a salesperson for if someone can just sign up for themselves? And, lots of the larger companies, I mean, if you go to somewhere like Dublin, it's unbelievable at the moment because it's all, everything's inside sales teams, and you've got these, these kind of multilingual, really passionate people that pre-sales and kind of business development and salespeople there, and it's a really exciting place to be at the moment. All the tech companies are there. That does mean there's a lot of churn as well. There's people probably only lasting about 14 months, that kind of thing. But going back to what I love about it is that so I love this whole if there's going to be 1 million less people doing sales, then you ask the question, well, okay. So what do the A players do? And the A players, their suggestion is that salespeople are going to have to become more technical, or the other way around. So that's one way of looking at it. Or the other way around is pre-sales people are going to have to become more consultative sellers.
Right.
So I think we're in an amazing position because we can have conversations with clients that salespeople can't, because we can build that kind of rapport and trust and credibility about. If only we could go beyond the technology discussion into the outcomes discussion, and we're really well placed to do that. And one of the posts I've just recently done, LinkedIn says that just one of the names of our roles, so what's that, solution consultant role,
sales engineer,
is growth of 74% year-on-year growth just on that role. And remember, you've done things about how difficult it is to kind of have one job title that describes all the different things we do. And the other thing I would say that's going on, and this is going to be a completely different kind of podcast that you'll have to do about, because you've done stuff with Bill Lapp, haven't you, about customer success?
Yes.
Yeah, I haven't checked it out yet, but I'm sure he'll have said the same thing, which is that there's a massive overlap between customer success at the top end and pre-sales.
Yes.
In fact, that's one of our futures.
Yep.
We're all over the place. We're the new face of selling, consultative selling. We're the kind of, you can stay just being pre-sales if you want. We are so valued, 74% growth. US labor statistics say 7% year-on-year thing. It's massive. It's more and more than that. And customer success, once they've overcome once they've overcome the fact that they think that they're a support organization, and then you can draw a graph of this, customer success, they think they're support, then they work out that actually they're a consulting organization, then they work out that actually, maybe we should do some education, and finally they work out that they're a pre-sales organization. 80% of skill set is an overlap with pre-sales. Yeah. And the proof of the pudding, I'm going to write an article about this, because you can draw a graph and just plot different companies, what they think customer success. And right at the apex at the top is just go and look at a job description for a customer success director at Salesforce and tell me that 80% of that job isn't a pre-sales job. I defy you.
I'm not going to do it. I am not going to do it.
Yeah.
So when you do write that article, please let me know so I can let my listeners know.
Yeah, of course. Absolutely. Yeah.
So which do you think is easier? A salesperson becoming more technical, or a technical person becoming more salesy, for lack of a better word?
It really depends. It depends on... there are some things you can teach and some things I think that are inherently in you. So this is an interesting thing. I think I am, in one aspect, a very terrible salesperson. And the one aspect of that is there's a big shout out to Jeff Green at Oracle who taught me this. In the same way that I always try and get everything down to this 1/3 pie chart, he did the same thing for salespeople. And he says 1/3 for a salesperson is IQ. Get that? We understand that. Yep. 1/3 is EQ, emotional intelligence. Yep. And that's brilliant. And so many people should work on that. Yep. They're trying to understand, put yourself in the position of the customer. And the final 1/3 he calls PQ, which is persistence quotient.
Okay.
Yeah. And
Okay.
which is that, you may have heard all these stats, it takes 8 contact points to get a meeting with anyone these days. That persistence, and being able and having that centered to overcome all the disappointments you get
Yeah.
in the sales world, that part of it, I total respect for people who can do that. But to go to your question, is that if we're talking about consultative selling, I think it's not without the realms of if you enjoy pre-sales, the tech thing side of it, but also you enjoy that, the case study, the insight driven, the value side of it. I think you're well on the way to this consultative selling aspect anyway. You probably kind of go, oh, I don't want to go too far, because of that quota driven side of things. But many pre-sales people are already on some kind of team quota thing anyway. So you shouldn't fear that. You should look to the fact that those influencing skills, the credibility that you've got, is just taking that further. I think it's harder for some salespeople to reverse back into the technology, but I have to qualify that because most inside sales teams are actually doing their own demos. They're not doing deep dive demos, but they're actually doing first demos. So they have to have some appreciation and understanding of the technology, and they'll probably, I'm sure, completely understand what I've just said.
Yeah. No, I do understand. So yes, I agree with you pretty much. I got nothing else to add here. All right, moving on. Second question. What's one thing about your job that you would change?
Ooh, well, I'm quite lucky because I get to work with lots of different companies. How did John? Was it Peter? What was his answer? That he said, was it something like you said he could try to clone himself?
Yes, he wants more people doing what he does, basically.
Do you know what I'd change? It's not so much for myself, but I wish we were a better respected profession.
A better respected profession?
Yes. Yeah. Seen as more value within businesses, because and that would be great for all of us. And because a lot of the conversations about best practice are, some of the things, like one of the things like Rule 24, go back to that, about video, that's a real challenge in a lot of organizations, because as soon as you start talking about creating things as video, well, marketing people will go, hey, no, we own that. That's right. Something for us. Or as soon as you start talking about introducing content, it's going to have to go, into this 2/3 of the sales cycle where before you actually meet them, they're actually, before they become a marketing qualified lead, whatever, if you want to actually term it that way. Other people go, no, that belongs to us. So, and we're, a lot of the time, we're seen as just a cost to the business. So I don't think we get the respect that we're due for the impact that we actually have on sales cycles, right, which I think is quite disappointing. So, so my hope would be, I'd like, as long as I possibly can, is kind of, hang on in there on the coattails of, influencers like yourself. There's lots of, pre-sales leaders out there doing some absolutely wonderful stuff, and to be able to, carry on working with them. But I just wish we had more influence in businesses and they appreciated our value, and the way the world is going and the impact we can actually have on sales cycles.
Yeah. Well, it's easy. We can just stop doing our job and see what happens.
Yeah. I think John Kerr's has he got an article about that, about a company who they got rid of all their pre-sales management.
Oh, yes. Yeah, we were talking about.
He wrote an article about it, and then what happened, and they had to recruit them all back again or something. Yeah.
I'm going to have to link that in the show notes now. All right. Next question. So you already mentioned a few books, A Demo to Win, The Rule of 24, great demo, John Kerr's book. Are there any other books you would recommend for SEs to read? Or is that, I think that could be enough.
Well, that's enough. I'm kind of a little bit wary of things like that, because, you can kind of go, if you had this big catalog and say, I don't know, people, some people kind of go, oh, you should read a book a month, that kind of thing. Maybe that's a bit tough, maybe a lot more books where you can kind of dip in and out and pick up some best practices or some aha moments. And also, there's some authors who are going to kill me for saying this, that there are a lot of books out there that shouldn't be books. What they actually are is, if it was an essay,
yeah,
it's about, like a 5-page essay, where somewhere about page 2 or 3, there's this bit you go, that's brilliant. That's something I want to, and then they spend like another page with some examples of whatever it is as usage or a case study of it. And that would do. It's just no one's going to do that. What they have to do is they'll turn it into a book so you can say you're an author.
Yeah.
So I wish there was a lot less of those out there to do that. But I love pushing people way beyond things like there's a good book, Draw to Win.
Draw to Win.
Where's that gone? Draw to Win. So that's a guy called Dan Rome. I totally recommend that because I have this kind of personal, I'm on a personal journey to stop people using PowerPoints.
Yes.
And to get a pen out, which I can see in the background. You've got your whiteboard there.
Yes, I do.
So 3 thumbs up, not just 2. 3 thumbs up to anyone who's confident enough to do that. And that generally is it, by the way. Actually, it's just the confidence to do it, and just having like a small vocabulary of little icons that you can use. Because if you can get away from even using words and just have some small icons, and you can constantly practice them, you don't need a lot of them, maybe like 5 or 6, and that's the way you can communicate. And you can talk about architectures, case studies, and you can draw it. And the other big thing is not to be too good at it.
Right.
That sounds counterintuitive, but one of the best things I've ever seen is someone get up sketching and then with a client say, this is how this works, and then pass the pen over, and the client be not inhibited because you're so good at sketching, whatever, to go, well, actually, this is what we call it. And this is how that would connect in. This is how we connect to it at the moment. And then you just keep swapping the pen. And that's brilliant. But to allow that to happen, you've actually, I don't want to say the word amateurish, but you've got to kind of have some very, just basic skills. Don't try and learn, sketching on whiteboarding or flip, because I love flip charts better than whiteboarding, which isn't very green, so apologize up front to anyone that. And I just love working with paper. But just having this basic set of icons is enough. You don't need to be able to sketch. It's not, it's not something that's going to be put in the Louvre. And actually, it's intimidating if you're really good at drawing, because you're not going to get a client to come and help you. But if you can, and they're willing to get up and you draw something together, that is so memorable for them. That's so different from having a presentation, a load of slides, bullet points, that kind of thing. I used to do some stuff with a guy on a t-shirt. Was it death to PowerPoint, that kind of thing?
Yes.
Just stop using it.
Yeah, well, I consider it death by PowerPoint, but I think that's
yeah.
So I don't have this problem. I'm never going to be good at drawing. I failed.
That's good. Honestly, that's good.
Yeah. I failed.
Do you know what's to blame with that? Is schools.
Well, I went to school in Lebanon, and they tried to teach me, and I was 12 years old, and I still couldn't paint between the lines. So I think they just gave up on me.
Yeah. Do you know, I run a course on this, and the first thing we do is I just show them, I've got some 7-year-old nephews, and I just show them some of the pictures they've done for me. And I said, let's just have a look at them. Can you work out what's going on? And you can. And you go, right, well, they didn't feel any intimidation in drawing stuff, and it was perfectly understandable that definitely looks like a house. That's a person. There's a car there. Get that. You go, well, what happens between that age and when you kind of finish school? A lot of people kind of go, I don't draw. I blame schools.
All right. Well, we can blame schools. Let's go. All right. Final question, and I think you might have already answered it, but let's see if you have something else. What advice would you give a sales engineer that you feel they don't get from anybody else other than sucking at drawing?
Brilliant. I'd just say, see that's an interesting question, because I'd hope a lot of things I'm saying I'm hoping they're kind of consistent with a lot of things a lot of other people are saying as well. I don't think I'm saying anything too different from what, if you listen to some other people talking about, where pre-sales is going, where our job is going. I hope it's not that different. But I definitely see people who are kind of new coming into the role who think it's all about the technology, and actually it's not. It's, yes, you've got to be, you call it stone cold? You've got to know it really, really well. But it isn't about that. It's about people. So build your people skills and your influencing skills, and things like LinkedIn. that's where you start establishing your credibility. That's where this idea of persuasion starts, is that, if you go to LinkedIn and people go, hey, this person knows about this, and they're sharing stuff, but offering an opinion. So don't just hit the share button, offer an opinion. Why do you think this is important? And people read that stuff. They kind of go, oh, I think you know what you're talking about. You're building credibility kind of there. So it's a people job. It's not a tech job. And I think if you've come into it and think it's all about, I want to master the technology, you're going to get disappointed, and you're going to end up in some quite serious situations, objection handling and stuff going wrong, where it's all about the people skills. Back in the old, can I just say this one thing? Back in the old days, we used to talk about this point in a demo. So let's go back to a demo called the gift. And the gift happens, I think this is again a Bob Roode style thing. The gift happens, and you test for it, when they don't actually need to see any product anymore. And what's probably happened is you've been answering some questions, and you test for it. You say, right, and you go, well, how does your company handle this particular business issue? And you talk about, some insights about it. And then you say, would you like me to show you how that's actually done? And the first time they'll go, yeah, of course, yeah. And you show them how it's done, tell them about the value that creates, and go, and then perhaps move on to another question. At some point, you must have built your credibility with them. Yeah, at some point you'll have built, there's enough rapport, enough credibility, enough trust and you can test for this point, because if they, again, without showing any software, again, it's a discussion, an interactive discussion we're having with people. Linear demos, linear monolithic demos are gone. Forget doing that. The only reason you're ever going to do that again is because it's driven by some external consultant. Is that they're gone. That is not what people want anymore. They want a discussion, and they want some kind of peer, build rapport discussion. So test again, and you say, how do you handle this issue, or where do you think we should go with this? And again, you can say, would you like me to show you how that's done? And at any point, and normally it'll be somebody like the hippo will do it, and they'll say something like, no, that's good, I'm fine. At that point, sit down and close your laptop and never show any more software. The worst thing you can do is get your mouse out and show some more user interface stuff. Forget it. You've just been given the gift.
Yes.
Yeah? And now it's about people and the respect that and the trust and the credibility that you have now built. And that's a brilliant moment. And you can then use it with those people in that room, not just in that meeting, but going forward all the way through the sales cycle.
It's a very good point. All right. Okay. It's like I'm kind of just trying to internalize that, and there's a lot of good information in there, which is kind of why you see me a little bit speechless. But let's move on.
I'm talking too much. One of the two. Yeah.
No, definitely not. So where can people find you? Like on Twitter, LinkedIn?
Oh, the only thing I use is LinkedIn. So I post as much as I can. I try to I try to do what I tell people. That thing, don't do what I do what I say. But I try, if I tell people this is the best practice, I do try to do that myself. So and actually I was at a meeting last night with some pre-sales leaders, and I did get accused that I talk in blog speak, or I talk in posts. Because when I get really animated, the way I'm articulating myself, if you have a look at some of my posts, is exactly the same. And if you read the post, well, I know, Ramsey, you can see me.
Yeah.
That level of animation, that's exactly where I'm like when I'm writing them. So, hopefully that passion comes through. That, we just talked about the death of long monolithic kind of demos, linear monolithic demos. Is that that's the way I articulate myself as well on LinkedIn as well. So hopefully that kind of passion and dead belief in it, I believe that to be totally true, and I hope other people do as well.
Right. So your blog is winningskills.com/blog, or
there's a blog there. Everything that's on there is also on LinkedIn.
Okay.
I always the two things are exactly the same. I don't ask of people that you go to the website. There's some tools in there if you want to go to the website, like things like books, that kind of stuff. But I'm not asking anyone to kind of do that. If you just go and check me out on LinkedIn, it's all there as well.
Okay, perfect. Well, I got nothing else. Any final words?
Well, thank you so much for inviting me on it. Like I said, long-time listener, first-time caller. What movie did we decide that was? Grosse Point Blank, didn't
Grosse
we?
Point Blank, yeah.
That's it.
So
Yeah.
if
I've been all over the place somewhere. I did make quite a few notes about things, and I looks like I've missed about half of it.
we could do another session whenever you want. I'm happy to do
No,
it.
it's probably the rest of it was too deep anyway. But
Okay.
yeah.
All right.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate. Please keep doing these because it's I'm going to promote your stuff as much as I possibly can. I mean, you're a rock star for kind of running these things.
Thank you.
And I know you told me how early you have to get up because you've got to do this outside the day job. So total respect. And again, 3 thumbs up.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. I'll talk to you soon. Thanks.
Cheers. Thanks, Ramsey. Bye.
Bye. Thank you, Don, for your time and energy. At one point, I was actually speechless. I'm not sure why. I think I was just in awe of Don's passion for the sales engineering role. I'd love to know what you guys thought about it. And if you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did, please let me know. I'd love to send any good feedback or any feedback really back to Don because I personally thought it was amazing, but I'm biased. So show notes are at wetheSalesEngineers.com/show60. I do want to remind everyone that I am reaching out to everyone who subscribes to the mailing list in June. At the time of this recording, I've already reached out to everybody that's already subscribed. It took a lot of work, but I love doing this. So sign up if you want to have a chat with me in order to shape wetheSalesEngineers.com. Another note, I want to say that I changed the way the resource page looks. I added a few more tools, educational sites, anything that would help SEs become better at their jobs. So let me know if you have any tools that you guys use that you don't see on there. I might not put everything, but if I find that they're useful to the general population, I would definitely add it. Some of these links that you would find on that page are affiliated links, which means I do get a bit of commission at no cost to you, and pretty much every cent that I make goes back into the website into making it look better, adding more stuff to it. So thank you for your support. If you do go through those links, I do appreciate it. And that's it. I really hope you guys enjoyed this conversation with Don. With that, this is Ramsey signing off.